Welcome into RBLR Bucs, your go-to spot for all things Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's officially June, the sun is out, and summer's heating up, which means we're diving into the world of realistic trades and some of that Bucs talk that actually matters. Look, we could get wild with the hypotheticals and build a dream team that, make Madden blush. Don't tempt us. But this week, we're keeping it grounded in what's possible and potentially probable. But a quick shout out to the rest of the RBLR podcast fam, repping Tampa Bay across the board. Rays, Rowdies, Lightning, the Sun. You already know the vibes. And hey, look, I get it's the off season. Some things are going on right now with the Buccaneers. Like I mentioned last week, we got some OTA action, but you already know RBLR Bucks is all year round. And joining me as always is the dynamic duo of Tampa Bay. I'm not going to go Benjamin Morrison and Jacob Parrish this time. No, we are going with the special teams unit. So, think Chase McLaughlin and Riley Dixon. It's all about that precision, power, and perfectly placed takes. So first up, he's got range from 60 yards out, nails the breakdowns every time. Mr. Zach Blaine, how are you, my friend?
I am doing fantastic, brother. How are you doing, my man?
So far, so good. It's been a rainy couple of days over here in Tampa, but it is what it is. I guess it's
We just got done with all that. We got your heat up here now.
Yeah, well, hey, man, school's out now, so honestly, I feel like the roads are a little bit quieter. Carter, you tell me, man, but around Pinellas County, it's been, I guess, somewhat quieter. I don't know. I was looking over there in Hillsborough County.
Yeah, I don't get out much, so I wouldn't know. No, I'm definitely. It's definitely been a lot quieter around here now that school's out, like you said. Plus, my girlfriend and I both work in the education sphere, so like summer, we sort of have a bit of a rest. So it's kind of nice. But yeah, it's been raining a lot, man. How you been dealing with the rain, Musab? It's been kind of off and on here in Riverview.
Yeah, it's been off and on over here as well.
Yeah.
But it's fine though. We needed it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. The lakes were looking dry. The ponds well, I guess they're all ponds. There aren't really too many lakes in Florida. But it's they definitely needed it. But we'll get right into it. We've got a good show coming up. We've got some really fun stuff to talk about. We're getting into the fun part of the off season where we're kind of talking about some loosey-goosey topics, stuff that maybe isn't super hard hitting or anything. They're just meant to be entertaining, but all of this is meant to be entertaining. So that's not really saying anything. But this week we're talking about realistic trade targets for the Bucs. Maybe some guys that if something goes wrong, if there's an injury, this, that, or the other. If the Bucs just need someone else, then maybe these are guys that the Bucs could look at dealing for. No weird ones. We get a little freaky with the defense. There are a few guys that maybe are kind of swinging for the fences here, but other than those two guys, we're mostly doing some realistic targets. I mean, they're all realistic, but some more than others. But we'll start on offense. I'll kick things off, and this is a pretty depressing place to start, to be quite honest. I'm going with Evan Neal, the New York Giants former first round. When as soon as you hear the words former first round, they're garbage. The former first round tackle out of Alabama. He's just not worked out at the NFL level. He is not a starter. Andrew Thomas and oh man, I can never Jermaine. I don't want to mispronounce his last name. I forget, but the Giants have two tackles. Evan Neal is just sort of there. But we've seen it with other teams. Mekhi Becton was a first-round pick for the Jets. He moved to the Eagles, got slotted over to the guard position, even though he's 6'8". So Evan Neal is also really big. So it can work. Maybe Evan Neal, change of scenery and all those cliches. But at the very least, he would provide a nice backup tackle option, even though he has struggled at the NFL level. Charlie Heck isn't exactly a world beater back there. So, Evan Neal would be kind of an interesting little depth option, and he would only cost a day 3 pick at most. So that's my first offensive guy. Zach, kick us off with yours. I'm sure yours is a little bit more interesting than Evan Neal.
I have one that I think is more interesting, but I'm gonna go a little bit also not interesting. Former pretty high pick, Noah Fant.
Ooh, I love Noah Fant on Madden. He's great.
I know on Madden he's a great player. Has not put it together in real life.
Unfortunately.
So former Broncos draft pick, now with the Seahawks. I don't expect him to come in and be a starter by any means, but a nice second or third option to give K-Dot some rest is, I think, something that Tampa still needs. I don't think they'll take more than a late round pick, and I think that he would be a good receiving option. He's not going to block anybody for you, but I think that he would be a great receiving option as a tight end for us.
Yeah, and I think with his athletic ability, I think it would be really fun to watch Josh Grizzard do his thing. Yeah, Grizzard. To watch him do his thing, put him in motion, tight end screens. Like, I think there's a lot of fun stuff.
It's like the poor man's Kyle Pitts, kind of.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
well,
really poor
Kyle Pitts. Actually, now that I think about it,
you say that, Zach.
Yeah. Now that we say that, Mr. Tariq, would you like to talk about your offensive trade option?
Yeah. I'm going Kyle Pitts, tight end from the Atlanta Falcons, and I feel like he could be a solid target. I know he hasn't, of course, lived up to his hype in Atlanta, but the talent's still there. Maybe a change of scenery might help him. I'll tell you this though. I mean, he is a mismatch weapon, and I feel like when it comes to how much we're going to give up, that's the question I kind of want to ask you all, because, I feel like the potential, for him to kind of really, burst out is still kind of there. It's not like, someone could be like, oh, no, I'm pretty confident this guy is he's already peaked. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, I know the rumors are that they want a day 2 pick, which
that's what I was gonna say. It's a day 2 pick, and he's in a contract year.
Yeah, and if a team wants to give up a day 2 pick for him, God bless him.
Yeah, it's kind of
more power to him.
Yeah,
you're gonna have
it's a sticky situation.
Yeah, is after you trade a round 3 pick for him, and that's being generous. If they say round 2, we're hoping it's a round 3 pick or a day 2 pick. We're hoping it's a round 3.
Right.
But even if it is a round 3, you still got to pay the guy, because if you're giving up a round 3 pick, you're not just getting him to hope that he's good. You're expecting him to be good. So it's up there in price for a tight end that hasn't really produced much. But I think if he reaches his potential, I mean, it could be a steal at a day 3 pick.
But I feel like he's also one of those kind of people you're going to reach because you need him to start. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And
that's a good
point.
Like
we're comfortable with Otten, so
right.
Yeah.
This would definitely be a mid-season.
Unlike my guy, Carter's guy's a depth piece, Evan Neal, and that's what I feel like we really need, because it's not only just Charlie Heck, that's raising my eyebrows.
Right.
There's a lot of dudes on the defensive side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely get there. And there are definitely some areas that the Bucs could really use some addressing. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with this Pitts discussion is that it would be more of a mid-season acquisition if K-Dot got hurt. I think that would really be the biggest situation if that were to arise. Because Atlanta, there's only one ball, and they have a lot of different, receiving options with London and Bijan Robinson coming out of the backfield. Even Tyler Algier is a really fun running back. So there's just a lot of mouths to feed. And Kyle Pitts, like you said, he's in a contract year. He has not really performed up to the massive expectations that his draft selection warranted. So it's been tough. It's been tough sledding for Pitts in his career so far. But I'm still going to draft him in fantasy because I'm stupid, and I'm still wishing on that year 7 breakout. Obviously,
I feel like it's kind of a tradition for you, isn't it? I don't know how many years. I feel like you've been drafting him every year.
Yeah, pretty much, man. And I've been getting burnt because of it. But I never learn. I'm the definition of insanity. Repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. But Zach, I know you brought up sort of more of a depth guy for your first selection, but I have a feeling you're always coming with something interesting. So, who's your second offensive trade target for the Bucs?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a depth piece right now with the potential to be not a depth piece in the future. I'm going with Anthony Richardson, quarterback on the Colts. It seems that he has kind of fallen out of favor with the Colts front office. I he has not been good. I'm not going to sugarcoat. Like, he's not been good. I think a big part of that is that he was put into the Indianapolis Colts system that needed a quarterback right away, drafted a guy that had potential, not necessarily a guy that was ready to play right away, and they started him right away behind not a great offensive line, not a great offense. This guy has, if you could make a quarterback on Madden, it would be Anthony. Like, your dream quarterback on Madden, that all you had to do was push buttons to play, it would be Anthony Richardson. He's
For sure.
He's mobile. He's got a cannon for an arm. Accuracy, it's not there. And I think that plays a role in the not being ready. Like, I think he needed to develop, and they didn't allow him to. I don't know what the price would be for Anthony Richardson. I don't think it would be cheap, but I don't think it would be expensive either. It's kind of in one of those, I'm thinking like between a third and fourth rounder. Maybe some more sweetener in there, but that's the main piece, to be a third or fourth rounder. The big thing is he would obviously learn behind Baker, who is kind of that gunslinger, mobile quarterback. Not as mobile as Anthony Richardson, but I think having him learn behind Baker and behind our offensive line, God forbid Baker play his way out of Tampa, with whether it be this play next season, the amount of money he's going to cost next season, whatever it is. If we had Anthony Richardson there, I think that if he could develop for 2 years, if Baker were to leave, I think he would be an awesome option to be the next starter. Whether he gets there or not for a third rounder, I would take that risk on him.
Yeah, and I think the good news with Richardson is that, like you mentioned, the Colts don't seem to love him. He seems to have fallen out of favor pretty drastically. And I think you give the Colts like 3 or 4 more weeks of Anthony Richardson just going out there and unfortunately not looking great. I think they fall even more out of love. And then I think that price drops off a cliff.
Exactly. And this is all banking on, they got to fall out. Tampa's got to fall out of love with Kyle Trask. And I don't think they have. We're not going to carry 4 quarterbacks on the roster, and I think we're already carrying 3, like we normally carry 3.
For sure.
So it kind of plays for the Colts and us. Like, they both have to fall out of love more with a quarterback. And while I think Daniel Jones gets the job in Indy, I don't think that we're ready to necessarily give up on Kyle Trask yet, unfortunately, but who knows? We'll see.
I just had a random vision of like a poor man's Jared Goff, Matt Stafford kind of trade going on between the Colts and the Bucs.
I would love that.
That would be great.
And
that would be
2 years from now, people are going to be saying that's the most even backup quarterback trade ever. You know what I'm saying?
Yikes.
I think we'd win that trade. Trask for Richardson, I think we'd win that trade any day.
Yeah, even if it's just using Richardson as the Taysom Hill guy, just like coming in
exactly.
For running options. Yeah, I don't know. That's
I think the Bucs should just take the L with Trask, and I support it. Now, I mean, it all comes down to how much we're going to be giving up. Hopefully, I'm thinking only day 3, but I like it. And I mean, I'm also thinking it's time for a little bit of change again in the depth room. And in this case, quarterback. I'm going actually Malik Willis from Green Bay. Mobile guy. We saw, some limited action from him. And I mean, look, in a very blunt, simple way, I mean, I feel like he can definitely contribute, somehow more than Kyle Trask for sure. And it's just like, again, whenever Baker does go down, I mean, I think it was worth
if he goes down, not when.
If he goes down, my apologies. If he goes down, then at least you're thinking, okay, I'm throwing in Anthony Richardson or Malik Willis. This is that time when you're like, okay, it was worth that. It was worth giving up, X, Y, and Z. So,
I mean, you got to think Malik Willis coming out of Liberty was a stud. He was a beast. Another guy who I think just hasn't really gotten a shot. Everywhere he's gone, kind of had a quarterback outside of Tennessee. So he went to Green Bay. They got Jordan Love, and he's kind of was just destined to be a backup from the jump. I think that he has potential to be a starter, but there's another guy who just hasn't developed yet. But I think as far as Anthony Richardson and Malik Willis, they both give you something that Trask doesn't, and that's mobility. Trask is one of the most unmobile quarterbacks in the world. So to have him back there when you've got a guy like Baker, it's two totally different play styles, and it kind of doesn't make sense to me. It's like you got to change the offense up when Trask comes in, and that I'll never understand why he's our backup still.
The thing is, yeah, I mean, it's not easy for any guy to go from college to the NFL. And, some guys like Malik Willis and Anthony Richardson maybe just didn't fit into that, organization that drafted them. They need, a little bit of change of scenery. I mean, it's been how many years now since we've got Trask, and we've seen absolutely nothing. So that's just a kind of big, kind of question mark, which is like, all right, we have like depth pieces that I've never seen. Yeah, we've seen nothing from Pratt. We've seen like a microsecond of Trask. And yeah, you know what I'm saying?
You're spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely tough. And like you said, I think Willis and Richardson both have struggled with their situations. You saw it with Willis last year with Green Bay, like you said, Musab, with the limited time he got with the Packers, he looked okay. It's because Matt LaFleur set up a game plan that played to his strengths, and I don't think that neither him nor Richardson have had a play caller or an offense that have designed to play to those strengths. And if the Bucs, it's that they've hired some pretty darn good offensive minds, so I have total faith that Grizzard can be that next guy. And if he's given an unfortunate situation where Bakers goes down, then if you give him some game planning time, he could turn Malik Willis or Anthony Richardson into at least a solid few weeks. It won't be like the ship is leaking and we're sinking and all that stuff. Whereas with Trask, like y'all said, I don't know that that's the case with him, just because of, it's a lack of mobility, and the other two guys are inaccurate as heck, but at least Trask is inaccurate too. He doesn't give you any speed though.
Yeah, at least they've got something going for him.
I just hope the Buccaneers are not waiting, for that kind of emergency situation where they're like, oh, look, Baker goes down. Okay. Now it's actually time to suffer with Trask.
I mean, I think from Tampa's front office standpoint, the way that I read it and the way that I've always kind of read Tampa's is they are loyal to a fault to their guys. They drafted Trask. They brought him back this year. I think that he stays around. Even if, God forbid, Baker goes down and Trask plays like dog shit, I expect him to stay the starter while Baker's out. Like, that's just how Tampa is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because we just knock on wood. Fortunately, we haven't had to deal with this scenario very often, right? So hopefully that remains the case this year. I would love for us to be talking all about this backup quarterback situation, and then the end of the season, it's like, well,
another year without seeing Trask.
Who knows? Maybe Trask is the one that's calling all the plays, and that's how Liam Cohen and Dave Canales became so successful.
Right, Trask is
good. That means he'll be a good offensive coordinator when it's.
And that's why the Buccaneers want to keep the guy, because they're like, oh man, this guy is horrible quarterback, but great locker room guy and a great sideline guy.
Hey, it's all about keeping that payroll down, man. You don't have to pay Kyle Trask very much to be a backup quarterback. But you'd have to pay him a lot to be an offensive.
It's like that guy from Blue Mountain State.
Alex Moran.
That's right. Well,
Alex Moran played well.
Right. Yeah. This Kyle Trask is not. But my second guy is also a quarterback. We're following a theme here. Will Levis, also only a day 3 pick, similar to Evan Neal. With all these guys, I think Anthony Richardson maybe being the exception. I think all these guys would only cost a day 3 pick because they're not world beaters. We're not talking about, Justin Jefferson or anyone crazy like that. Because, that just doesn't line up with what the Bucs need. And it's very much like another sort of, if the Bucs do decide to move on from Kyle Trask, Will Levis is out there, and he looked awful last year. There's the whole memes with the turnovers and all that stuff, but he's still got a little bit of arm talent. And he was also playing for an awful team. So there's a realistic path to him being a quality backup for a decent team like the Bucs. There's not really a path to success with a team like the Titans or a lot of the other teams that we're taking a look at them in the draft. So yeah, Will Levis is my second offensive choice. But if you're looking to upgrade your wardrobe with more than a day 3 pick, if you're looking for a first round pick type of upgrade, definitely head to shop.rblrsports.com. We've got some really great stuff for you. No Will Levis's or Anthony Richardson's in here, just Baker Mayfield's, Tom Brady's, whatever great player you want to insert. For Tampa Bay sports gear, we've got you covered. And we'll give you a promo code. That's Cannons, CANNONS, and you get 10% off your entire order. So moving on to the second half of our episode, in case you couldn't tell, we're going to be talking about some defensive players. First half was offense. We're switching sides. No special teams. I don't think there's going to be any special teams trades going on.
You want to sob?
Right, exactly. But if y'all want to sound off in the comments about how you think that, Dixon needs to be replaced immediately before the Bucs even see him, then, go ahead. But we'll start with defense. And Mr. Blaine, give us your first defensive player that you want to see the Bucs potentially trade for, maybe.
All right, I'm going to go the most unrealistic one right off rip. Not because he's not likely to be traded, but because I think he's going to be probably the most expensive defensive trade piece this year. I'm going to go Trey Hendrickson. My reasoning, obviously, he's a stud, led the league in sacks last year. Would instantly make Tampa a very, very, very scary defense. You got Hendrickson on one side, Reddick on the other, mix in Yaya Diaby, and I think that's one of the best pass rush defenses really around, if I'm being honest, outside of like the Eagles. Don't tell them I told you that. Main problem with him is he's not going to be cheap. You're talking probably multiple day 2 picks, if not more than that. I believe they are wanting probably close to a first. So it's going to be, if we could get him away from a first, I would give up a day 2 pick for him. Add it in with other stuff, a day 2 pick this year, a day 2 pick next year, kind of a deal I would be okay with, because I do think that he is a game changer on a defense.
Yeah. Hendrickson's, he's like you said, sack leader last year. There's not really much else to say. He would be an immediate just game changer, in terms of this defense. It's just tough. Like you said, he's going to cost a lot, not only in draft capital potentially, but you also got to give him a new deal, because that's the whole reason that Cincinnati is looking to trade him, is because he's on an expiring deal and he wants, rightfully so, to get paid. So it's tough. But like you said, he would just immediately turn the Bucs' probably biggest weakness. Well, I don't want to say biggest, but a potential weakness into a
top 3 weakness for sure.
Absolutely. Definitely not a source of strength for them. Yaya and Reddick, they could be really interesting. They could also not be great. There's a pretty high variance range of outcomes for both of them. So, I dig Hendrickson. Obviously, who doesn't? It's just a question of, how much are the Bucs willing to give up, and how little are the Bengals willing to receive.
Exactly.
Hendrickson. But Mr. Tariq, how about you, man? Who's your first defensive player for the Bucs' dream trade targets?
Yeah, first one I'm going is TJ Watt. Oh yeah, man. I think this guy could, pair well with Hassan Reddick. Perfect for Bulls, blitz heavy system. I'll probably say as well, with the injury history, he's getting older. It could be like a high risk, high reward kind of option, for a contending team like the Buccaneers. So I don't know. I know from what I've been informed, it's kind of an uncertain situation, but that would be real damn nice if we got him.
Yeah,
I think a game changer. Not as much as Trey Hendrickson, but a big help. Big help.
Immediate upgrade, absolutely, right off rip. And I got to be honest, I don't really know how much he would cost, because there hasn't really been a whole lot of trade discussions around him. But at the same time, like, he's seeking a new contract, like he's seeking an extension. And I don't know, the Steelers have proven to be kind of interesting with the way they deal with their veteran players. Like Antonio Brown was dealt. They were very ready to get rid of Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, they are very pragmatic about these kind of things. So as much as TJ Watt's an emotional leader in that locker room, and, all the captain situation and all that stuff, he's a really important player for them. But, business is business.
I also think it would do TJ Watt good, because when he plays in Pittsburgh, he's kind of the guy.
For sure.
And I don't think that I'm not saying he wouldn't be the guy in Tampa on the pass rush, but I think that he'd be able to play in more of a rotation. So it would be better on his body to play in a rotation, and I don't think he's going to have that in Pittsburgh. I think in Pittsburgh he wants to play every play. He's going to play every play because he's just that much better than everyone else on that defensive line.
Yeah.
He's better than everyone on our defensive line, in my opinion, but I don't think he's that much better than everyone. So I think it would play well that he could get in a rotation and take plays off and not have to be an every down player.
Yeah, because I mean, it's him and Alex Highsmith.
Highsmith, yeah.
Yeah, those two guys, like, they're their horses. They're the workhorses in Pittsburgh. They like you said, they don't have a whole lot of. It's more of a quantity or quality over quantity approach, whereas the Bucs sort of have more of a quantity over quality.
Yeah.
So it would definitely be interesting to see him plugged into the Bucs defense and just, like you said, kind of be more of a situational pass rusher. But all of these reasons speak to why he would definitely not be as costly as Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, not coming off of as strong of a year as Trey Hendrickson, a little bit older. The injury concerns are a little bit more profound. So that would definitely be a really interesting sort of middle ground for the Bucs if they were looking to sort of upgrade their pass rush situation. And his contract situation, as well as Pittsburgh in general, definitely worth monitoring, because Pittsburgh, who's their quarterback?
Even if it is Aaron Rodgers, you guys are still going to suck.
Yeah. So we could get to the middle of the season and they're like, man, we can't have TJ Watt on this roster anymore. It could be a trade
that saves Pittsburgh. And this is a huge question mark, is if Kirk Cousins gets traded to Pittsburgh. That's the only
even then,
right now. Even then, I don't know if you save that offense, but that's their best option, because Aaron Rodgers looked like awful last year. I had to wash my mouth there. He looked really bad last year. And at what level does a guy who plays like that get the opportunity to go, I'll decide when I want to play? Brother, you played trash last year. You don't have an option. You either show up now or you don't play.
For sure. Because people point to Aaron Rodgers' big passing yard total, but man, that guy was inefficient as heck. And that is the opposite of previous Aaron Rodgers iterations. Obviously off the field, weird, a lot of strange stuff going on with him. But in terms of production, oh my goodness, that guy was a monster. But this past season, like you said, just absolutely atrocious, really, really bad stuff. The inflation of his passing yard total was also because the Jets were just really bad. So you're playing behind that often, you're going to be racking up some passing yards. So I'm not really, like you said, I'm not super sold on Aaron Rodgers or the Steelers in general, but we'll definitely see how it plays out. And maybe they're bad enough to where TJ Watt ends up in a Bucs uniform, which that'd be kind of fun. I'd kind of dig that. But since we're going with pass rushers, I'm going to stick with that theme for my guy, Kayvon Thibodeau from the New York Giants. A little bit expensive, $9 million this year, plus a 5th-year option on his rookie deal for up to $14 million. And he's kind of been middling despite his him and Neil were both part of that same draft class, former first-round picks. That's not usually a good sign if that's the label for him. But he did have the 13-sack year the year before last, but has been just kind of average in pressuring the quarterback. TJ Watt kind of has this similar profile to where, he's super efficient to where when he gets after the quarterback, he's getting him down, but he's just not getting after the quarterback as much as you'd like to see from a elite pass rusher. I put that in quotes for Thibodeau, obviously, but he could be another good rotation option, especially if the Giants mostly just want to unload his contract for a day 3 pick, because Thibodeau's a bit expensive and they already have Burns and they just drafted Carter. So, they have some really good pass rushers. They don't really need to be spending that much money on their pass rush group, but we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how it shakes out. That'd be an interesting name to monitor. But I'll follow it up with my next pick too. I'll go back to back for these trade options. Jermaine Pratt, linebacker from the Cincinnati Bengals. He's okay. He's sort of the Noah Fant of linebackers, if you will. I don't know if anyone's ever made that that comparison.
I don't think so, but as soon as you said it, it made perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of fine. I think his reputation is sort of higher than his actual production. And that's fine. He's in the last year of his deal. He's another guy for the Cincinnati Bengals that's kind of seeking a new contract. They're more likely to give it to Trey Hendrickson than they are to Jermaine Pratt, because he's just been so-so. And he also plays the off-ball linebacker position, which just isn't as high of an impact as a pass rusher. So I don't know. He'd be an interesting sort of just competition with Servassier Dennis and Walker and Deion Jones. Maybe just give the Bucs another interior linebacker option, but only if it's a super late day 3 pick. I don't know that I don't know that he's worth even higher than a round 5 pick. Honestly, he's probably more a 7th or 6th kind of guy, if that. So Jermaine Pratt, sort of an interesting name to monitor. If he even stays on the Bengals, he might just be cut. In which case, obviously, the Bucs could swoop in and just sign him, which would be kind of fun. But Mr. Tree, who's your second defensive player option for the Bucs to trade for?
Mr. Jalen Ramsey from the Dolphins.
Fun one.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could be a potential target. Still plays at a high level, and if Miami, wants to, kind of look younger and reset their cap, he could be moved. And the thing is also, I mean, I hope everything goes well with Morrison and Parrish, but I mean, secondary is still, still a concern, at least as of today. So now, due to his age and contract demands, could be a lower, could come at a lower cost. But I don't know, where is y'all's heads with this? Is this something that could be of interest? I know we've actually discussed this before, because I know there were some talks about this.
Yeah,
earlier on.
I love Jalen Ramsey, and I would love to trade for him. I didn't have him on my list because our cornerback room is like unknowingly deep. We could be really deep, or we could be in the same spot we were in last year. It all depends on how these young guys play. Ramsey would cost so much, I think, to re-sign, and then you risk him. If we trade for him and don't re-sign him, you risk him not playing. And Ramsey strikes me as the kind of guy that will hold out. Yeah,
he's sassy, man.
I would not be shocked.
You seen that sassy interview?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
You tell me.
So I fully expect him to be traded. I would love to have him in Tampa if Tampa felt that he was worthy of it. I'm cool with it. I would just the namesake alone, like having Jalen Ramsey on your team is, as us, like in our age group, that he kind of grew up watching him. So sure. I'm all for it. I would love it.
Yeah, and I think this would be another sort of break glass in case of emergency kind of thing. Like Jamel Dean, he's got that injury history. It's kind of the like clockwork. He's going to miss a few games, and Zion McCollum also missed a few games last year. Benjamin Morrison obviously has the hip thing coming in. And Hall obviously, unfortunately, suffered that injury just immediately, which was just awful to see. So there's a lot of injury question marks, even with the Bucs having as many cornerbacks as they do. So maybe all that, unfortunately, obviously, knock on wood, hopefully it doesn't, but maybe all that happens, and then the Bucs front office, Jason Light's like, man, I don't want to see Tyreek Funderburk taking more snap counts this year. I'm not trying to see that for another season, and maybe that's where they pull the trigger and trade for Ramsey. But like Zach said, definitely a risk of him holding out, especially if he doesn't have a new contract. It's just a weird situation in Miami, so I don't know how that all plays out, but that's definitely something to monitor for sure. But Mr. Blaine, take us home. You'll finish us off with this last defensive player that you would want the Bucs to potentially trade.
This is the defensive player that I want the most. I don't know that he's on the trade block, but I'll explain it, I guess. Quay Walker out of Green Bay has had 3 consecutive seasons of 100-plus tackles, going into his 4th year now. Not the most consistent as far as coverage skills and being there, but it kind of fits Tampa perfect. Look at Levante David. I think this guy, Green Bay just declined his 5th-year option because his 5th-year option would have cost $14 million. From everything I've read, it says they're expecting to keep him around past the 2025 season. But I think that has to be mutual. And I would imagine as a guy who just got cut or just got his $14 million taken from him, he's probably not as likely to stay there now. But like I said, 3 years straight, 100-plus tackles, could be better in coverage. But I think that if he comes to Tampa, he automatically takes that inside linebacker 2 spot next to Levante David, learns behind Levante David, and is the perfect replacement for David when David decides to retire, which I am fully expecting to be after this season. So you got to re-sign him. That's the downside, but I don't think he's going to cost as much as some of these other guys we were trying to trade for. So that's why, in my opinion, he would make the most sense because he won't be a $20 million guy, but he will be a starter and I think a really good player for you and be productive.
Yeah, and I think it also depends, if Servassier Dennis is able to take a step forward this year, then maybe this sort of gets put on the back burner. But if Servassier Dennis struggles, if Anthony Walker goes out, isn't great as well, and continues to kind of flounder in his career, then yeah, Quay Walker definitely enters the conversation because the Packers are very much kind of in an interesting spot themselves. They've got the Jordan Love situation. He's really good, but at the same time, like they're going to continue to want to build around him too. They keep swinging on wide receivers. They kind of have a quantity over quality approach there. So they have a lot of sort of holes to fill.
And they have depth at linebacker.
For sure, yeah.
You got Isaiah McDuffie, you got Edgerrin Cooper. You brought in Dumas Johnson as an undrafted free agent this year. Like they've got depth at linebacker. I think if they were to move something, I wouldn't be shocked if Quay Walker was the guy moved. And I think whoever gets him, I don't know what it would cost. I'd imagine it's not going to be a 5th round pick. Like he's a 3-year, 100+ tackle guy. Like he's productive. He's not great, but he's productive. And so I think you're going to be looking at a day 2 pick there.
Ooh, really?
I do. I say that, but they declined his 5th-year option, so he's only got 1 year left.
That's what I mean.
Potentially could be an early day 3.
I just with like you said, the 5th-year option is what really plays into it for me. As well as him being an interior linebacker too. Like,
well, he'd only be 2 because David's 1. I think realistically, David kind of has inside linebacker 1 because he's been in Tampa so long. Like, and this is not harping or hating on David, but he was not good last season,
right?
In my opinion, I don't know that he should be inside linebacker 1, but I think he's got the history with Tampa that if we brought in a guy and made David inside linebacker 2, it would almost be rude. So I think. Skill-wise,
you have to respect. Yeah, man, you have to respect OG, man. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like he's the OG, so I get it. I think Quay Walker would be inside linebacker 1, in my opinion. You get younger, he can develop, still learn with David, but to put him on that roster as linebacker 1 is kind of it's hard to do with David being there.
Sure. It is kind of semantics with like who would be first.
Exactly.
Like, they run a 3-4, like they're both going to be out there anyways. So it doesn't really matter who's 1 or 2. And you would want David calling the plays. You want him to be the leader out there. Like that's definitely their quality of play might be a bit different, but David's leadership and his knowledge of the defense and all that stuff is definitely there enough to where that wouldn't be an issue. So it's kind of a non-starter. I mostly meant just the impact position rather. Like, the off-ball linebacker is important. Like it can be very valuable, but it's not necessarily going to command a 1st or a 2nd round pick. Like he's not Roquan Smith, he's not Fred Warner. He's not one of those guys. Those guys might get a day 2 like 1st round pick / one of those returns. But a guy like Quay Walker, I think he might be more of a day 3 pick kind of guy, but we'll see, if the Packers do decide to move on from him, the market will tell us. I know the frustrating thing about the NFL, I think the most annoying thing is that these trades almost never happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like trades are so boring. Like teams are never willing to part with picks. And I get it, like from a logical perspective, I guess. But at the same time, like I'm trying to be entertained,
Bro, if this was if we could have a trade market like the NBA where there are picks being traded 10 years out, like, dude.
Yeah, left and right. Yeah.
NBA trade deadline is my favorite time of year. I don't even really watch the NBA anymore. Like
Right.
I watch it, but Miami's been kind of ass, so I haven't really been watching it that much lately. But dude, to see like the NFL, I get excited when the trade deadline comes up and they have that little NFL Network show, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna see some confetti shooting when trades go off. There's like 2 trades.
Right.
I sat here and watched for 6 hours to watch 2 damn trades, and one of them being a third-string offensive lineman. What the hell am I doing here?
Right. Yeah, it's depressing. But that brings us to the end of our trade discussions. This was kind of a fun episode. We'll be back at you next week as well with some more fun content. Definitely stick around for that because it's the off season. We're going to be kind of talking about some maybe not super Bucs related stuff. Obviously the college football trailer, the video game came out this week. So we'll be talking about some video games at some point, I'm sure. We'll be talking about position battles and looking at stats and all that stuff. So definitely stay tuned for that. Give us a follow, give us a like or subscribe if you like what you heard, and you can stay in the loop, stay updated. Definitely give us a follow at RBLR Bucs or RBLR Sports. Check us out there. But thank you to my two wonderful co-hosts for making my job easier. We'll see y'all next week. Thanks for staying with us. And as always, go Bucs.
Go
Go
Bucs.
Bucs.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.